My daughter asked me to walk her down the aisle on September 14th. I buried my wife on September 3rd. 11 days between the worst moment of my life and what should have been the best. I did both in the same black suit. My name's Jack Mercer. I'm 54 years old, and I spent 19 years building bridges for Harmon and Reed Infrastructure, literal bridges, the kind that hold up highways and carry trains across rivers. I was their senior project director, the guy they called when the state said something couldn't be done on time or under budget. I made it happen anyway. 63 projects completed. 0 failures. Not one. Diane died in August. Pancreatic cancer. They found it in April, and she was gone by summer. 4 months from diagnosis to funeral. The medical bills came faster than the grief. $340,000 by the time I stopped counting. Insurance covered the surgery. Not the experimental treatment. Not the specialists in Houston. Not the 3 weeks in hospice where they charged $1,200 a day to let my wife die comfortably. I was still figuring out how to pay all of it when Craig Whitmore called me into his office on a Tuesday morning. Craig was 39, Harvard MBA, hired 8 months ago as the new VP of Operations. The kind of guy who wore a Rolex to a construction site and called concrete gray stuff in his first week. He'd never built anything in his life, but somehow he was in charge of a $2.1 billion infrastructure firm. Jack, I'll get right to it. He didn't offer me a seat. We're consolidating senior roles. Your position is being restructured effective today. Lisa Pham from HR sat in the corner, not looking at me. She had a manila folder in her lap, severance paperwork already printed. They'd planned this before I walked through the door. You're firing me, I said. Not a question. Restructuring, Craig corrected, smiled when he said it, the kind of smile you want to knock sideways. 2 weeks severance, continuation of benefits through the month, and a letter of recommendation. Lisa's voice was flat, professional, like she'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. I looked at Craig. This kid who'd been here 8 months was throwing away 19 years of my work because a spreadsheet told him my salary was a line item he could cut. What about the Chesapeake project? I asked. Craig waved his hand. We'll reassign it. The Chesapeake Bay Bridge rehabilitation. A $187 million state contract I'd spent 14 months negotiating with the Maryland Department of Transportation. We'd broken ground 2 weeks ago. I'd personally guaranteed the engineering specs and staked my professional reputation on the delivery timeline. And Craig was going to reassign it. I took the folder from Lisa, walked out past the open office where 20 people suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. Same as always, nobody looks at the guy who's getting walked out. You become invisible the second you're no longer useful. I made it to my truck before the shaking started. Not crying, just shaking. My hands on the steering wheel, gripping hard enough to turn the knuckles white. Diane had been gone 3 weeks. My daughter's wedding was in 11 days. And now I had no income, no insurance, and a stack of medical bills that could choke a horse. I drove home. The house felt enormous without Diane in it. Her reading glasses were still on the nightstand. I kept finding her hair ties in the couch cushions, her grocery lists magnetized to the fridge. The last one said, eggs, yogurt, Jack's birthday cake mix. My birthday was in October. She'd been planning ahead. That was Diane, always thinking about what came next, even when she knew what was coming for her. I sat in the kitchen and stared at nothing for a long time. It wasn't until Thursday night that I remembered the contract. I'd been going through the filing cabinet looking for Diane's life insurance documents, a policy we'd taken out years ago, modest, $75,000, when I found the folder labeled H&R Employment. My original contract from 2006. Thick envelope, company letterhead, signed by the founders themselves, Raymond Harmon and Patricia Reed, real engineers. People who understood that the guy who builds the bridge matters more than the guy who counts the money. I almost didn't open it. 19 years of contract terms seemed irrelevant when you'd just been told to clean out your desk. But something made me pull it out. Maybe habit, maybe instinct, maybe Diane, wherever she was, nudging me toward the fine print. Page Elf. Section 9C. Under termination provisions. In the event employee is terminated without cause during an active project period, employee shall be entitled to 15% of the net profit generated by all projects employee managed or initiated during the 24 months preceding termination. I read it 4 times. 15%. Not of my salary. Not of my department's budget. 15% of the net profit from every project I'd touched in the last 2 years. I pulled up my laptop, opened the project tracking spreadsheet I'd been maintaining for years-old habits from my early career when I learned to document everything. In the past 24 months, I'd managed or initiated 7 major projects. Total contract value, $412 million. Average profit margin for Harmon and Reed on infrastructure work, 22%. I opened the calculator. $412 million times 0.2. 2 equals $90.64 million in estimated net profit. 15% of $90.64 million. 1,356万元. $13,596,000. I set the laptop down very carefully, like it might explode. Then I laughed. The kind of laugh that comes when the universe deals you the worst hand imaginable and then quietly slides an ace under the table. Craig Whitmore had fired me to save my $280,000 salary. He'd just triggered a clause worth 48 times that amount, and he had no idea. But I knew Craig, knew his type, anyway. The moment someone challenged him, he'd get defensive. He'd rewrite history, fabricate documentation, claim I'd been underperforming, turn a without cause termination into a for cause firing to void the clause. I needed evidence, and I needed it fast. I picked up my phone and called Manny Reyes. Manny was my lead structural engineer, been on my team for 11 years, best bridge man in the Mid-Atlantic. We'd survived 2 hurricane season builds together and a collapse investigation that could have ended both our careers if we hadn't documented everything properly. Jack, I heard, this is garbage. I know. Listen, I need your help, but I need you to understand what I'm asking could put you at risk. Silence for a moment. Then, tell me what you need. Everything from the last 8 months. Internal emails, project evaluations, anything showing my performance was solid. And anything that shows Craig was planning cuts before bonus season. Bonus season. Manny's voice went hard. Jack, you're not the only one. They cut Elena Vasquez from engineering last Friday. Quietly. And Tom Chen from estimating the week before that. Both senior people. Both high salary. Elena Vasquez. 22 years with the company. She'd designed the structural reinforcement system we used on the I-95 overpass rebuild, saved the firm $3 million in materials costs. He's gutting the senior staff. Right before Q4 bonuses hit, and right before the Chesapeake project starts generating revenue. Manny paused. There's something else. Craig restructured the bonus pool last month, redirected 60% of the performance bonus allocation to the executive tier. The board doesn't know yet. I felt that cold thing settle in my chest, the same feeling I used to get on job sites when I'd spot a hairline crack in a support beam. The calm before the calculation, can you get me documentation? I still have project manager access to the shared drive. Craig's assistant set up a folder called Restructuring Confidential. Real, subtle. Password is his wife's name and the year. I figured it out by accident when I was looking for the Chesapeake specs. Don't do anything risky. Jack, you spent 19 years making sure everyone on your crew went home safe. Let me return the favor. He sent the files the next morning, encrypted zip folder through a personal email. I opened them one at a time. First file, a performance review for Jack Mercer, dated March 15th. Rating, needs improvement. I'd never seen this document in my life. I right-clicked. Properties. Date created, September 28th. I was fired September 24th. Second file, a written warning dated June 2nd. Failure to meet project milestones. Date created, September 28th. Third file, a disciplinary memo dated August 10th while I was at my wife's bedside in hospice. Lack of engagement and repeated absences. Date created, September 28th. 3 fabricated documents, all created 4 days after my termination, all backdated to make it look like I'd been warned repeatedly. Craig had forged my performance history while I was burying my wife. The fourth file was an email chain between Craig Whitmore and Harmon and Reed's general counsel, David Ashford. Subject, headcount optimization, pre-Q4. Craig wrote, need to eliminate 4 to 5 senior positions before Q4 revenue hits the books. Target highest salary PDs and engineers. Coordinate with HR on documentation. Keep executive team insulated from process. David Ashford's reply, understood. Make sure performance files support termination rationale. We should be prepared to demonstrate cause if any of them push back. They'd planned it, written it down, put it in a folder on a company server with a password a child could guess. I called Vivian Okafor. Vivian was a construction litigation attorney out of Baltimore, former Army Corps of Engineers. the kind of lawyer who dealt with federal contracts, fraud cases, and government audits before she went private. Her office was on the third floor of a building in Fells Point, right above a crab house. The whole place smelled like Old Bay seasoning and justice. Jack Mercer. Manny said you'd be calling. She was already at her desk when I walked in. Didn't look up from the file she was reading. Sit. I laid out everything. The contract, Section 9C, the fabricated performance reviews, the email chain, the project financials. Vivian read the contract clause 3 times, slowly. Then she took off her glasses and looked at me. This clause is bulletproof. Old school retention language. Ray Harmon wrote these contracts personally, didn't he? He and Patricia both reviewed them. They believed in keeping their senior people. Well, they built a good trap. 15% of net profit on all projects in the last 24 months. That's not ambiguous. That's not negotiable. Craig doesn't know it exists. Of course he doesn't. He's been here 8 months and probably hasn't read a single contract that wasn't attached to his own compensation. Vivian leaned back. Here's what they'll do. They'll claim cause. They'll wave those fake performance reviews around and argue you were underperforming. That's why they created them. But the metadata destroys their case completely. Documents created 4 days post-termination, backdated by months. That's not incompetence, Jack. That's fraud. So what's our move? We go surgical, 1 letter. We lay out Section 9C, attach the metadata evidence, reference the email chain, give them 10 business days. Make it clear the alternative is a federal fraud investigation, plus a wrongful termination suit that'll make headlines in every engineering trade publication in the country. And if they try to settle low? Vivian smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. Then we remind them that the Maryland Department of Transportation would be very interested to know that the firm managing their $187 million bridge project just fired the project director, forged his records, and is committing bonus fraud. State contracts have integrity clauses. Harmon and Reed could lose the Chesapeake project entirely. That would cost them everything. We're not bluffing, Jack. We don't need to. The letter went out Friday morning. Certified mail, return receipt. Monday afternoon, my phone rang. David Ashford, Harmon and Reed's general counsel. The same man who'd told Craig to make sure performance files support termination rationale. Mr. Mercer, we'd like to discuss your letter. In person. Our offices, Wednesday at 9 a.m. I'll be there with my attorney. Mr. Whitmore and our CEO will be present. The CEO, Robert Harmon Jr. Raymond's son. The one who'd inherited the company and hired Craig to modernize it. Wednesday morning, Vivian and I walked into the Harmon and Reed conference room. Top floor, glass walls, a view of the Baltimore harbor that cost more per square foot than most people's houses. Craig sat at the far end. Navy suit, no tie, trying to look casual. His leg was bouncing under the table. Next to him was David Ashford, laptop open, typing something he'd never finish. Robert Harmon Jr. sat at the head, 61 years old. Looked like his father, but softer around the edges, less construction site, more country club. Still, there was something sharp behind his eyes. He'd grown up watching his parents build a company from a 2-truck operation. He knew what real work looked like, even if he'd forgotten. Thank you for coming in, David began. We believe there's been a misunderstanding regarding. There's no misunderstanding. Vivian's voice was level and clear. She opened her briefcase and slid a flash drive across the glass table. May we? David looked at Robert. Robert nodded. Vivian plugged in the drive. The wall screen lit up. Performance improvement plan for Jack Mercer. Dated March 15th. She clicked. The metadata panel appeared. Date created September 28th. Mr. Mercer was terminated September 24th. Click. Written warning. Dated June 2nd. Created September 28th. Click. Disciplinary memo. Dated August 10th. She paused. August 10th. Mr. Mercer's wife was in hospice care. He was granted bereavement accommodation by HR documented in the system, and someone created a disciplinary memo claiming he was disengaged. She let that sit. Created September 28th. The room was silent. Craig had stopped bouncing his leg. His face was the color of wet cement. All 3 documents fabricated in a single session, all backdated, all designed to convert a without cause termination into a for-cause firing. Vivian clicked again. The email chain appeared on screen. Craig's words, need to eliminate 4 to 5 senior positions before Q4 revenue hits the books. David Ashford's response. Make sure performance files support termination rationale. David Ashford, sitting 6 feet from that screen, watching his own words projected 10 feet tall. He closed his laptop very slowly. Additionally, Vivian continued, we have a sworn affidavit from Elena Vasquez, terminated September 19th after 22 years. Her performance records were similarly fabricated post-termination. We have a second affidavit from Thomas Chen, terminated September 17th. Same pattern. She turned to face Robert Harmon Jr. Mr. Harmon, your company fired 3 senior employees to inflate the executive bonus pool, then fabricated documentation to cover it. One of those employees was managing a $187 million active state contract. The Maryland DOT has integrity requirements for key personnel changes. If they discover the project director was terminated under these circumstances, you will lose that contract. And if this reaches federal investigators, and it will, because falsifying employment records connected to government contract work is a federal offense, you're looking at debarment. Debarment. The death sentence for a government contractor. It means you can never bid on a federal or state project again. For an infrastructure firm, that's not a setback. That's extinction. Robert Harmon Jr. stared at the screen for a long time. Then he turned to Craig. Craig, leave the room. Robert, I can explain the context. Leave the room. Craig stood up, knocked his water glass with his elbow. It didn't spill, just wobbled there on the table like it was embarrassed for him. He walked out without looking at anyone. David Ashford started to stand. You too, David. David's mouth opened, closed. He picked up his laptop and left. 4 of us now. Robert, Vivian, me, and the truth. Robert folded his hands on the table. Mr. Mercer, what do you want? What my contract says, I'm owed. Section 9, C. I had my team run the numbers last night. Robert opened a folder. 7 projects in the qualifying period. Combined net profit, $88.7 million. 15% is $13,305,000. He slid the paper across the table. $13,305,000. Wire transfer within 5 business days. Vivian looked at the document, read every line. I watched her eyes. No surprise. The numbers were real. 2 conditions, I said. Robert waited. Elena Vasquez gets reinstated. Full back pay, restored benefits, and a formal apology from your office. Not HR. You. Something shifted in Robert's expression. Not quite shame. Maybe the memory of how his parents would have handled this. And Tom Chen gets a settlement. $350,000. He's got 2 kids starting college next year, and you fired him 3 weeks before his retention bonus vested. You're negotiating for other people. I'm reminding you what your parents built this company on. It wasn't spreadsheets. Robert was quiet for a long time. Outside the window, a cargo ship moved slowly across the harbor. The same harbor his father's company had helped build the port facilities for. 40 years ago. Agreed, he said. All of it. He stood and extended his hand. I shook it. His grip was firm, but there was something tired in it. One more thing, Robert said. Craig Whitmore's termination will be effective today, and David Ashford is being placed on administrative leave pending an internal review. That's your business, I said. Not mine. Jack. Robert paused at the door. My father would have never let this happen. No, I said. He wouldn't have. Vivian and I walked out of the building into the September sun. The air smelled like the harbor, salt and diesel, and something green from the trees along the waterfront. You left money on the table, Vivian said. You could have pushed for more. Pain and suffering, emotional distress, the bereavement angle alone. I got what the contract said. Plus accountability. You got 2 other people taken care of. That's the same thing. 5 business days later, the wire hit my account. $13,305,000. I stared at the number on my screen until the characters blurred. Then I opened the hospital billing portal. Diane's medical debt, $340,000. I paid it in 1 click. Watched the balance drop to 0. Mortgage, paid off. My daughter's wedding, covered. The loan I'd taken out for Diane's treatment in Houston, gone. Every financial weight I'd been dragging since April, erased in 15 minutes. The first call I made was to Elena. Elena, it's Jack. Jack, I've been thinking about you. How are you holding up? Better. Check your email. Should be something from Robert Harmon's office. I heard her clicking, then silence, then a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. This says I'm reinstated. full back pay, and a personal apology from Robert. That's what it says. Jack, how did you spent 22 years keeping that company's bridges standing. They owed you more than a cardboard box and a security escort. Tom Chen called me that evening. Jack, I just got off the phone with Harmon and Reed's new counsel. They're offering a $350,000 settlement. Take it. Did you do this? You earned it. They just needed reminding. My kids, his voice broke. Jack, my kids can go to school. That's all that matters, Tom. My daughter got married on September 14th. I walked her down the aisle in a garden in Annapolis, wearing a suit Diane had helped me pick out 2 years ago for a company gala. It still fit, barely. Sophie looked like her mother. Same dark hair, same way of tilting her head when she smiled. When she took my arm at the end of the aisle, she whispered, "Mom's here, Dad." I can feel it. I didn't trust my voice, so I just squeezed her hand. At the reception, I sat at the head table and watched my daughter dance with her husband. The band played something slow. The fairy lights strung across the garden made everything look like a dream someone forgot to wake up from. I thought about Diane, about how she would have cried during the vows and laughed during the speeches and danced until her feet hurt, about how she'd planned for this day since Sophie was 6 years old, cutting photos from magazines and keeping a folder labeled Sophie's Wedding Ideas. I'd found that folder last week. It was 3 inches thick. 2 weeks after the settlement, Craig Whitmore's departure was announced on LinkedIn. Excited to announce a new chapter, the post said. 3 sentences of corporate nothing. No one commented. Word travels fast in the infrastructure world. Government contracting is a small community, everyone knows everyone, and reputation is the only currency that doesn't depreciate. Within a month, I heard from 2 separate contacts that Craig had been turned down for positions at competing firms. One of them told me the hiring manager had called Robert Harmon Jr. directly and been told the unvarnished truth. Craig Whitmore would not be building anything, anywhere, for a long time. In November, I got a call from a firm in Annapolis, Chesapeake Engineering Partners. Small outfit, veteran-owned, focused on bridge and marine infrastructure. We're not a big shop, said the founder, Angela Torres. Former Navy Seabee, built forward operating bases in Afghanistan before coming home to build bridges in Maryland. We don't do politics. We don't do spreadsheet management. We build things. What are you looking for? Someone who knows how to talk to DOT officials without reading from a script. Someone who understands that a bridge isn't a line item, it's the thing standing between people and the river. Part-time? Your terms. 3 days a week. Senior advisor? You help us win contracts and mentor the young engineers. Teach them how to do this work like it matters. I started the following Monday. The money from Harmon and Reed went into investments. Conservative, long-term. I kept enough to handle the house, set up Sophie and her husband with a down payment on their first home, and fund the one thing I'd been thinking about since Diane died, the Diane Mercer Foundation for Pancreatic Cancer Research. Partnered with Johns Hopkins, not flashy, not named after a building or a wing, just to fund $100,000 a year going directly to early detection research. The kind of research that might catch the next Diane's cancer in January instead of April, that might give someone 4 years instead of 4 months. They sent me a photo of the dedication plaque. I put it on the shelf in my home office, next to Diane's reading glasses and the last grocery list she ever wrote. Eggs, yogurt, Jack's birthday cake mix. 3 months after the settlement, I got an email from someone I'd never met. Mr. Mercer, my name is Karen Holloway. I worked at Harmon and Reed from 2018 to 2023. I was let go during a restructuring that I always suspected was designed to reduce headcount before bonus season. My performance reviews were suddenly negative after 5 years of exceeding expectations. I couldn't prove anything. I couldn't afford a lawyer. When I heard what you did, I sat in my car and cried. Not because of the money or the legal victory, because someone finally said out loud what the rest of us knew but couldn't prove. They were cooking the books and sacrificing good people to do it. Thank you, not just for yourself, for all of us. I read that email 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and sat in the quiet house. That's the thing about standing up. You think it's just your fight, your contract, your money, your dead wife's medical bills and your daughter's wedding and your pride. But it's never just about you. There are people watching who fought the same battle and lost. People who were told to be grateful for their severance package and walk away quietly. People who knew the truth but couldn't afford to prove it. And maybe, when one person refuses to go quietly, it gives the next person permission to do the same. Last week, I ran into Manny at a conference in D.C. He was presenting on seismic resilience standards for mid-Atlantic bridges. Packed room. Standing ovation when he finished. We grabbed coffee afterward. How's Chesapeake Engineering? He asked. Good, honest work. Small team that actually cares about what they build. Manny stirred his coffee. Craig tried to get hired at a firm in Richmond last month. They called me for a reference. And? I told them exactly what happened. Every detail. They pulled the offer before lunch. We sat there for a while. Two engineers who'd built things together for over a decade. Real things. Things that carried weight and held up under pressure. Any regrets? Manny asked. I thought about it. About Craig's career in pieces. About $13 million in my account. About Diane's name on a research plaque at Johns Hopkins. About Elena back at her desk. About Tom's kids going to college. About Sophie dancing at her wedding under fairy lights. No, I said, not one. Some nights I still sit in my home office with a glass of bourbon and look at Diane's empty chair across from me. The house is quieter now. Not lonely, exactly. Just quiet in the way places get when someone who filled them up is gone. But the bills are paid, the mortgage is done, my daughter is happy, and good people who got cheated are a little less cheated now. Craig Whitmore looked at my salary and saw a number to cut. He didn't read my contract, didn't check the fine print, didn't consider that the guy who builds the bridges might also know how to build a case. 15%. That's what Section 9C said. And that's what I got. Craig gave me the leverage. He just didn't know it until it was too late. That's not revenge. That's engineering.